that the government intends to continue in this term exactly the same way as you did in the last term, and Fianna Fáil stands indicted for giving you the opportunity to do this once again. Because despite protestations to the contrary, the government clearly intends to ignore the real-life crises faced by many people, just as you did before. Your response to the crisis in our health service, the housing crisis, the deficiencies in Garda Síochána, the NAMA scandals, the plight of rural Ireland are exactly the same as they were for the last 5 years. First of all, you deny that there is a problem. Then you announce half measures wrapped up in fine rhetoric. And yesterday's announcement of measures to tackle organised crime is a good example. These modest measures, while welcome, do not go far enough. Following the Regency Hotel murder, the government line was that Garda resources were not an issue when it comes to tackling organised crime. The task force announced yesterday would be welcome if it means additional and extra resources. But does it? In Dublin North Inner City, there are 140 less Gardaí than there were in 2010. And unless there is an increase in Garda numbers, this task force will be made up of Gardaí brought off the front line elsewhere. And this lack of resources is not an accident. And it's not unique to Dublin. It's an issue right across the state. But it's a direct result also of the policies of your government on a Fianna Fáil before you. So, Taoiseach, this needs to be totally reversed. Will you indicate to the Dáil when the new measures announced will be in place? Will there be additional Gardaí? And will there be additional funding?
Thank you, Deputy Adams. Taoiseach.
You let fly at Fianna Fáil. Then you mentioned health, housing, rural Ireland, and then the Gardaí. So I'm not sure whether you expect to deal with all of the four of them in the very short time I have here. I would say to you that I would. You only asked.
No, there's no need.
You mentioned Fianna Fáil, health, housing, rural Ireland, and then the Garda situation. Now let me say to you that. What we inherited 5 years ago was a situation where there wasn't any money, where Garda recruitment had come to an end, where Templemore was closed, and you've had this festering situation in North Inner City Dublin and other locations around the country for quite some time. So government began to put resources where possible into the security forces, both Defence and Garda. Reopened Templemore, began to recruit Garda. We set out in our programme for government an increase of recruitment through Templemore to actually have a real increase in Garda numbers to bring to 15,000 and to cater for those people who retire on age grounds. We've made it perfectly clear on many occasions that whatever request that the Garda Commissioner and the Garda authorities would look for to deal with gangland crime, that we will provide those resources. And you can only do that if you've got a strong economy, and that's why it's important that the management of the public economy be kept very clearly in sight here. We discussed this at the Cabinet after having met with the Garda Commissioner and the senior Garda personnel last week. And the CAB, the Criminal Assets Bureau, made a specific request that the threshold which applies under the Proceeds of Crime Act of '96 should be reduced from 13,000 to 5,000. We're going to do that. Also, by way of regulation, the government decided on advice from this Criminal Assets Bureau to reduce the prescribed sum under which cash suspected of being the proceeds of crime can be seized from 6,500 to 1,000 under Section 38 of the Criminal Justice Act. And further proposals will go to government to enhance and update legislation for the lawful interception of communications in respect of criminal activities. Now, I said last week, Deputy Adams, this is a matter that goes beyond mere party politics. This affects the lives of people, it affects the lives of innocent people, and we understand the fear and the pressure that these communities are under. So the Gardaí are going to have the crime task force, or task force on crime, for all of Dublin. We're going to respond with a task force in respect of the North Inner City. I expect to have consultations with you and other members of the different parties who might have ideas about that, and then go down and talk to the community leaders, the public representatives in the North Inner City, and look at the social disadvantage, look at the unfairness that's there, look at the lack of facilities that have been in those areas for very many years. I'm glad to see that the new primary care centre is about to commence and have a sod turn for it very shortly in Summerhill. But we need so much more. because this is not something that can be dealt with overnight. There's a much longer requirement for initiative and investment and consultation and work with those communities where there are very good people committed to giving their children and the children of those localities an opportunity to have a life and to have an opportunity. So that will mean that whatever Garda resources are required on the advice of the Garda Commissioner will be provided. And Government have made that money available and are following through with these actions that won't of themselves put an end to this, but that will help the Garda authorities and the Gardaí on the ground and those communities to come to grips with this scourge.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach. Deputy Adams, you have a minute for a supplementary.
Well, it's great news, Con Collier, that the Taoiseach has discovered that there are problems in some of our communities caused by criminal gangs, and I'm sure the people who are victimised by these gangs are delighted that the Taoiseach has this new knowledge. I asked 3 questions. When will the measures announced yesterday be put in place? Will there be additional Gardaí? Will there be additional funding? You never answered any of those questions. And it's crucial that additional Gardaí are on the ground and that in Garda Síochána are resourced properly. But this is not just a policing matter. There's a need for increased investment in education, job provision, drug treatment and crime prevention. And local communities are up for this challenge. Many have battled for decades. Many have battled for generations against government indifference. And now that you have discovered that there are disadvantaged communities within earshot or eyeshot of this doll, you now need to deliver, go beyond the rhetoric and put real measures in place. So last week I asked that a task force involving local communities be put in place, government-led, but with full involvement of those local activists and local people to carry out a comprehensive multi-agency strategic plan for Dublin's North Inner City. When will that be put in place? How will it be resourced and what funding will be provided? And I remind you, Con Collier, that the Taoiseach hasn't answered my original 3 questions.
Thank you, Deputy.
Well, let me reflect again for you. We've already had the capacity to reopen Templemore, to train new Gardaí and to dispense them around the country. The Government have decided to increase the Garda force to 15,000. You can't do that without a strong economy, and you can't do it without providing proper training for young Gardaí. And as you will have known over the last few days, the situation, insofar as probationary Gardaí is now concerned, is that they are supervised in their training, that you don't have situations which arose in the past where that wasn't the case. Money has been provided. Extra money has already been provided, an extra 5 million to deal with the request from the Garda Commissioner in terms of the labour intensity of surveillance, of dealing with gangland crime, of interventions, of preventions of shootings or attempts to kill people. This is something that the Garda Intelligence and the Garda force have been dealing with now for quite some time. I accept, Deputy Adams, that it's very necessary for whole of government to work with communities like the North Inner City, to give them some chance to have real opportunity. And you couldn't do that if you didn't have resources in your economy to make some impact here. And we've been blamed, I know, in the past for being too focused on the economy. But believe me, we will go down there. But we have to know how you link all the agencies together. What is the purpose of your North Inner City Task Force? What resources are required down there? What is it that the leaders in those communities, the public representatives of all parties and none, will have a voice in this? Because if it's to be a whole of government response, then it should be so. It's not this party or just the government wanting to deal with this. This is about our people, and those in the North Inner City are good people, and they should have the same opportunities as anywhere else to live their lives and raise their children.
Thank you, Taoiseach. We move on. The third question is from Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan.